Howdy champs, my name is Mohit and people, today we're gonna talk about creating multiple text columns using CSS3. In fact, let's start off with a browser preview straight away. Now this division that we have, as you can very clearly see, that has 1, 2, 3 and 4 columns, also has an H1 element out here which is spanning the entire width of the 4 columns. Now just by making very little adjustment to the code, I can make the H1 element span just one single column like this and not the entire width of the 4 columns. It also makes a little adjustment to the column height, and that is why the there's space left for the 4th column. So if there was extra text, it would have actually flown into the 4th column, but since it's not there, it's just it's being truncated at the 3rd column itself, right? So we can control the heading 2 quite easily. What we're going to do is, we're going to start from the very beginning, from the very scratch, and let's see how we can create multiple columns. Also notice that there's some column gap and a column ruler which is dashed and silver in color. So we're going to look at all this from the very beginning. So let's start. Let's get back to my HTML document. People, what I'm going to do is, in the opening and the closing body tags, if you notice very carefully, we have one single division with an ID of call for columns. I'm going to leave that, but I'm going to delete all the internal or embedded styles that we have. Okay, I'm going to delete that, and you can notice quite clearly that I'm actually working with HTML5 doc type. We have the opening HTML tag out here, the header opens out here, closes out here. We have the meta with the charset attribute out here in the title, which says CSS3 multiple columns goes out here. Let's save the document up, and let's take up a browser preview to see how things look plain and vanilla. So plain and vanilla, basically, you see people, we have one H1 element, and we have one single column. Basically this the text is flowing flushing from left to the right, and there's absolutely there are no columns at all. So let's start doing just that. Very cool. So people, what I'm going to do is, I'm going to click anywhere where it says div with an ID of column. Also notice that we have an H1 following that just inside that div. Okay, let me click out here. Let me create a new CSS rule. The contextual selector type will be automatically set at ID. Be happy with that, be content with that. The ID rule will auto populate as hashtag call, which is fine, and the rule is getting saved inside this document only. For bigger documents, people, avoid, but for this example, I'm okay if it is going internal or embedded. I'm going to say okay. Let me start creating CSS rule definitions for the hash call. Okay, so I'm going to straight away head to the box category, and I'm going to define a width of, let's say, 100%, so the entire width from left to the right, and let's say a height of 600 px. Okay, I'm going to keep a padding of 10 px all around. I'm going to go to the background, and let's say a very mild color. How about corn silk? Yep. At the same time, let me get on to the border category, people. Let me say I would want a solid 1 px, and let's skip the color, so default to black. Okay, so let's save the changes up, bring up the browser, let's refresh to see the changes that have actually happened. Okay, very cool. So nothing much so far really, people, just with, we have a div with some padding, one H1 element and some text. Okay, let's get back. Now I'm going to add some properties, but I'm going to do it manually. I'm going to start with the dash webkit dash vendor prefix, so that we support Safari and Chrome. People, we still don't have IE 9 and below support for the columns property. We cannot create multiple columns for IE 7, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so see, the vendor prefix dash webkit dash supports Safari and Chrome WebKit browsers, but strangely enough you'll find that it also supports Opera. I'm not so sure why this happens, but it does happen, and I'm going to show it to you. Alrighty, so dash WebKit dash, and then I'm going to use I like using the shorten property out here, unlike most people who like to use the columns count property. I just like to use the columns property, right? And out here, people, you can specify columns either in terms of the width or the number of columns. So if I say 4 out here, basically it's going to automatically calculate the width and divide the entire text into 4 equal columns. So let's take up a browser preview in Google Chrome. Alright, it actually divided it into 3 columns simply because we didn't have enough text. Alrighty, okay. Otherwise it would have actually gone into the 4th column too. The text would have flown to the 4th column too. Let's get back. Alright, what else we can do is, people, we can again the WebKit vendor prefix, people, to so that we find support in Chrome, Safari, and also Opera, strangely enough. For Mozilla we'll need to use a different vendor prefix. I'll come to that a little later, which is moz dash. Okay, so dash WebKit dash and column gap, people. Obviously I would want a different gap. Let's say, how about 30px. At the same time, people, I told you that when we are using the column shorten property, I can also specify the column width instead of the number of columns. So if I specify that I would want all my columns to be exactly 250px with the column gap set at 30px, and let's take up a browser preview. Let's see how things look like right now. So basically I've specified that my widths should not be any less than 250px. Let's drop it down to 150. Let's see what happens. And there you go, smaller column widths. Okay, let's go back to number of columns, and so I've also specified a column gap, people, which by default maybe 20, I'm not so sure, right? But you can always increase or decrease that. And we can also make sure that all the different columns are actually separated or demarcated with the help of a ruler. So dash WebKit dash as always, and I'm gonna say column rule, basically creating a ruler or a line, a horizontal line. And let's say I would want it to be thin, really thin, which should be 1px, and then I would want it to be, let's say, dashed, and then the color, how about let's go with silver. Alright, so let's take up a browser preview and let's see how things look like right now. So you can actually see that we have a thin ruler of the color silver, which is actually dashed, running between the columns. Very cool. Now, people, at times, and as I've shown you in the preview at the very outset of the tutorial, that we can have the h1 element span the entire width of the different columns, and it's so very easily done. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go out here, create a rule for h1, and I'm going to use the dash WebKit dash again to support Chrome, Safari, and also, strangely enough, Opera in this example. So dash WebKit dash, I'm going to say column span. So that's the column dash span property, and I would want it to span all. So I would want my h1 element to span all the columns, no matter how many they are. So let's take up a browser preview and let's see the change. Okay, now this h1 heading is no longer confined to the only column. Now you can also see that the different columns have kind of distributed themselves equally and have pushed themselves to 4 different columns. So the text is actually flown to the 4th column too this time. So this is how you can actually change. The default people is 1. If you don't specify this dash column span property is actually 1. Alrighty, and I'm gonna make a small change out here. I'm gonna use the border bottom property just to specify a border at the bottom, and again I'm gonna go with 5px solid, let's say gray color. So just a border at the bottom, just for the aesthetics people, nothing else. Alrighty, this color doesn't quite actually suit. Let's try this color. I think I'll need to thin it down to, let's say, a 3px. Probably will look better. Yep. Alrighty. So people, I hope you found this information useful. I hope you'll thumb the video up. I hope you'll sub, and also hope that you'll keep coming back more and more tutorials from me. Once you have a good day. Bye bye. Peace.